Hey everyone, this is Coach Jeff. This video is intended for players, coaches, and parents, and I wanted to take a few minutes to give everyone an update on a few things, including where I think that we've made progress since the start of the year. A couple things that I think that we'll need to work on, but we'll need to work on it over time. We're not going to see an immediate benefit, but then also, in particular, what we need to work on now. And I'll spend probably the bulk of the time talking about a few things that I think that we need to work on now, because if we can focus on it, we're going to see the best improvement and the most immediate results. So I'll start up at the top with where we've made progress. And building team chemistry, I'm super proud of. I see the boys come together, and I think they've built a really strong rapport. I think we saw that evidence of that at the pizza for most of the boys that were able to make it after the game on Thursday. I think generally on the field, they've got really good chemistry. We have talked to them a bit recently about how to interact when they get frustrated, if themselves or their teammate is not making a play, making sure that they're staying positive and encouraging. But in general, I think there's a really strong foundation of chemistry, and I couldn't be more happy about that. Second is understanding positions. If you remember the first video I made of the game against the Bolts, the first game of the year, I think a lot of the boys were kind of confused about where to be on the field and their position and their responsibility, and where they should be relative to their teammates and in certain situations. I think we've made a lot of progress there. I think we've got a real common vocabulary and vernacular about the positions and what they mean and where they should be. So that's a really important foundation. I'm glad that we've built that. I also think that we've made some progress identifying a near-term fit for players at 1 to 2 positions in order to make it simple for all of the boys. And so everyone has things to learn. And in order to kind of narrow the set of learning opportunities for each player, I think it's really important at this juncture in particular to limit the movement of players around to different positions so they can spend time and they can focus on 1 or 2 things that they in particular are learning. I think we had to go through a little bit of growing pains to figure out, in order to keep this team as competitive as it can be in a really competitive league, while also, limiting the movement around of players. I think we had to go through and try some different things. I think we've learned a lot about who for right now can be at their best in certain positions. So I think we'll see a bit of stability as long as we get good turnout, at each of the games. Then I think we'll have a lot of stability in terms of who plays where. And now that'll be for the duration of the fall season. That'll pick up again in the spring season. Over the winter, we're going to go down to 7v7, so that will change some of the position assignments, add a little bit of complexity there. But because there's fewer players, it should be a little bit easier to manage that. For the time being, I think we can get a bit more stability in terms of which players are playing which positions. Now, what I think that we'll need to work on over time is a couple of things. And I say we'll need to work on them, we'll need to work on these things over time, because we're not going to see an immediate benefit. This takes a lot of time and investment. It's training the body to do certain things and training the muscles. And so speed and agility, we've already started. You've probably seen that at practice, including elements where we're challenging the players to run fast and to make quick moves with and without the ball. I also think that we've seen a little bit of benefit, and I think we need to keep at it. Secondly is skill and technical development. And by that I mean with the ball, knowing how to trap the ball consistently, reliably, making good, situationally relevant passes, mostly on the ground to a teammate, sometimes in the air, shooting the proper way. I think there's a lot of individual ball skills that have to happen in the moment. They have to be sort of second nature in order for us to really kind of compete at this level and to be the best that we can be. Those are not, in my view, quick fixes. They take a lot of concerted effort over time. We will likely include a little bit more here and there of skill and technical development in practices, but I think this is where we need to look at soccer camps. And we'll talk a little bit more about that over time. We'll need to keep our eyes out for soccer camps. In my experience, my own personal development as a player, that's where I grew, was having hours and hours, blocks of time over the course of the week where I had really good individual instruction from a coach that could really give me in the moment feedback about my technique and my mechanics, my body mechanics, and my mindset in approaching the individual skill and technical development. We're only going to get so far in our CLP practices on that. If we want to grow as individual players, we're going to have to look, I think, outside of that and make investments in soccer camp. So there's probably things that we can do as coaches to scout out what those camp opportunities are and recommend them to you as parents and players. But I would say the bulk of our progress in skill and technical development is probably going to come outside the context of our practices and games, though we will try to make some targeted investments. Now, and where I wanted to spend the bulk of this time is what we need to work on now. And a lot of this is taking cues from our game on Thursday night. We played a really, really good team. You can see that these players have been playing together for a while. They've been investing in their own, gameplay. I do think that we can compete with a team like that more than perhaps players think that they can. And so it helped, I think, put into focus a few things that we know are an opportunity, and hey, we're going to continue to grow. But I always think that if we can really put a laser focus on a short list of things that are where we can get the most near-term improvement, that's how we're going to grow, continue to build confidence, continue to build performance. And those three things are: number one, containing; number two, marking; and number three, goal kicks. So I'll hit that in a little bit more detail, and then I've got a graphic to pull up, particularly around marking, and I'll go in a little bit of detail. There is some complexity there, and I think a visual will really help lay out my expectations on the marking piece. But first, I want to talk about containing. And by that, I mean on defense. We can talk about offense, but offense doesn't matter unless we win the ball. And winning the ball starts with containing an opposing player who has the ball. And when an opposing player has the ball under control, facing our goal with their head up and the ability to make a soccer play, that's where we need to contain them. Our goal in those circumstances is for the player that is marking them to keep that player in front of them. The goal is for that player to prevent that specific player from scoring a goal. They're in a powerful position. They have the ball at their feet, under control. Their head is up. They can make choices about what to do. We just need to make sure that they don't score. They can pass it to a teammate, and that would be fine. That would be a good outcome. Obviously, even better, they can fumble it. They can give it up to our player. That would be great. But, at this level, these players are trained. We can't expect that. We need to prevent the player with the ball from scoring. And that is containing, keeping the player in front of us, not stabbing, not diving in, not jumping at the ball, and giving the player an opportunity to go around us and get a clean shot at the goal. We have been working on that in practice. 1v1, we will continue to do that. But that's one key area where I think we can continue to improve and where I think we can continue to make near-term progress. One of the challenges, it may be that in practice, when our teams are defending and containing, they may not be seeing a level of skill in practice that they're seeing, for example, in teams that we saw on Thursday night. And so what may be successful in defense in practice is not success. They may get rewarded for taking chances, for stabbing at the ball in practice, and they're not getting rewarded for that same behavior and those same moves in the game. And so I think a little bit of our own skill and technical development, which will give us better offense and will give our defenders a higher level of skill to face during practices. That will help us in containing, but I don't think we need to wait for that. And we need to continue to drill and continue to give the players feedback on proper containing, when to contain, how to shuffle, move their feet. I think we've really only scratched the surface on it, and there's evidence, strong evidence throughout the game that containing can be better. Secondly is marking. And by that I mean preventing a player on the other team who does not have the ball, preventing them from getting the ball cleanly, or worst case, if they receive the ball, making them receive the ball so that they are facing their own goal and preventing them from turning to face our goal. If we mark successfully, one of those two things will happen. We'll prevent a player from receiving a pass from their teammate. We'll also prevent from, we'll prevent them from winning a ball. I think one thing we saw is more in the beginning of the game. I think the boys weren't as aggressive as I've seen them be. We were almost letting the other team win balls and not going to balls. But if we want to focus on a few things, I would say marking, and let's prevent their teammates from receiving a pass or from turning it to our goal. That's our best chance to win the ball and to start our offense. And that's where I think we're a little bit consistent, and that's where I want to get into some of the details of the expectations. Position by position, who's responsible for marking who. And so we'll get into that. And then finally, goal kicks. We are struggling on goal kicks. We've been working on this a little bit. Mainly this happens when we see pressure from the other team. And that's something I don't think we've seen, that sort of pressure. We also have some boys that are playing goalie and center back more often that weren't doing that. So they're not, the decisions that they should be making in certain circumstances aren't clicking yet. We are admittedly working on a build out of the back mechanism, which is a high bar to shoot for. I think it's an important one to learn, and so we'll keep working on that. I'm not going to spend a lot of detail in this video, but goal kicks is something where we will continue to work on. And I will say, if we go back to the Bolts game at the beginning of the season, that was our Achilles heel. We have made a ton of progress on goal kicks, so I am proud about the progress that we make. But given that the ball is close to the goal, we need to retain possession, and we need to continue to work on that. All right, so I'm going to go back, and I'll close this out by talking a little bit about marking. And the purpose of this will be that each player knows who they should be marking. So there's no question if a player on the other team receives the ball cleanly and turns the ball cleanly, whose responsibility that was. Any of the coaches looking out on the field, seeing an unmarked player on the other team, we can clearly know, well, whose player is that's supposed to be. And once the boys know that, I think we can do a little bit better job of when the boys come off the field in substitutions. They can tell the player that's coming in for them, hey, I've got number 8 or I've got number 12. That is very common practice because we haven't made marking super clear and easy to understand. I think that's not happening as consistently as it should. It's probably more the exception than the rule. So we got to build that habit, but that will start by, well, who should I be marking? And there's a little bit of complexity. For some players, the answer is pretty clear and easy. For other players, the answer is a little bit of, it depends. And so that's complexity. And so I want to go through that here. Now we're in blue, and the opposing team is in black. And the opposing team is playing what I would call a 3-2-3 formation. And this is probably most of what we will see throughout the year. So there are 3 defensive backs. There's 2 fullbacks on the outside and a center back in the middle. There are 2 center midfielders. And then there are 3 forwards. There's a striker and then 2 forwards or wingers. And so this is the 3-2-3 formation that we're going to see most often. Now here we are in our 4-3-1. We've got 4 defensive players. We have 3 midfielders in kind of the triangle here, and then the striker up top. I do think the 4-3-1 continues to be the best formation for us. It gives us an extra defender On defense, it allows us to stretch the field and play wide if we can take advantage of it, and it allows us to stretch the field with a striker as long as the striker is staying high, which is a little bit of an opportunity for us, or at least it was on Thursday. So defensive assignments and how this works. Maybe I'll start where it's simplest. The fullbacks on the outside have responsibility for the wings on the other team, right? And so in this case, this is the left fullback. This might be, for example, Adam, and the other team's right wing is probably a skilled player. Adam's going to need to, when they have the ball, now marking up pertains to when they have possession of the ball. When we have possession of the ball, we should be seeking to get open and receive a pass. And then when they win possession again, then we need to quickly recognize that and then mark up. So, where a player's playing is going to go back and forth between marking up and finding open space. And so it's important to keep track of the ball so we know what we're doing. All of these scenarios will involve the other team having possession of the ball. And so that's why I'm going to be going specifically about the marking responsibilities. So in this position, the left fullback has their right wing. Our right fullback should have their left wing. And that's, I think that's very simple. That's pretty easy. And I think the others is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Now we have two center backs who are responsible for their striker or their center forward. Okay, and this is where the two center backs, and we had Kaysen and Mike play center back. I do like them back there, and so they need to partner on how to cover this. And the way that this should work is it's based on where the ball, what side of the field the ball is on. All right, in this situation, it should always be the weak side center back that is marking up the center forward, right? And so in this case, might be Kaysen on the right side. Okay, he sees that, he sees that the ball is over here. He's going to need to mark that player really tight. Now he's in a position here. If the number 7 tries to play to the number 9, Kaysen can either step in front of the ball, and win the ball and then start our offense, or at least prevent this player from turning and facing our goal and getting a good shot by playing really aggressive defense. Now what that does is it allows our left center back, who might be Mike in this case, from being a bit of a safety valve. If Adam is playing aggressive defense, he makes a play for the ball, he's not able to contain, or something happens, Mike gives us an extra defender which can kind of slow that down and allow Adam and the rest of the defense to recover. Now conversely, if the ball is on the other side of the field, right, and we've got Ryan over here, their left wing has the ball. What we need to do is we need to switch, and this is where our center backs will need to communicate, right? Kaysen will need to come off. Now notice in all of these cases the center backs are playing central, and they are not going out to the sideline, right? They'll want to be the backup for the fullback, but they shouldn't need to go out to the sideline, except in some really rare circumstances that I won't get into today. But in this case, the weak side, so now the weak side is our left over here. And so the weak side center back will play the striker and prevent that striker from getting the ball cleanly, while the right side center back is there and free and able to support if needed. And notice, I didn't put the center back up close here, right? That limits our flexibility. That leaves this space open and vulnerable, to a run from one of their players. So we do still need to play centrally, and we need to not sort of crowd the ball and allow the fullback over here to contain their offensive player. Okay, so that takes care of the center backs and the fullbacks. Now, where should the other players play? Okay, now this is a CDM, our 6, and this is most likely Aditya or Josiah. They have two midfielders, and we have one center defensive midfielder. So now, in this case, the CDM should be playing the strong side midfielder. Okay, and on the strong side, our cam, our attacking midfielder, should be guarding their fullback. And this is one big opportunity that, and I think that the boys haven't consistently figured this out often. I think our cams are getting really low, and it allows the fullbacks to come up wide open, receive a ball, switch the field, even make runs. I think we had a fullback score a goal on Thursday night. And so it's really important that, yes, the cams are getting back on defense, but they need to know the players that are going to hurt them, right? So on the strong side where the ball is, right, the cam wants to look for the fullback and make sure the fullback can't hurt us, preventing, in this case, the wing from making a pass back to the fullback, right? And so already we don't even have everyone marked, but look at how much stronger this, this defensive position is. We have a fullback playing the wing, on the ball. We've got a player in the center back free. This wing is going to have a hard time passing it to the striker, passing it to a midfielder, passing it back to their fullback. And so this gives us an opportunity to win the ball as long as we can contain here. Once that pass comes, this is our opportunity to attack and try to win the ball. Now, on the weak side, we haven't covered this yet. Is the cam should be covering the other, the other central defensive midfielder, right? This cam, if we win the ball, this cam is not likely going to do us any good by being out in the space. This person is so far from the play, they're not helping us on defense. This person is between the goalie and their right fullback in this situation is the least dangerous player on the field. We don't need to guard that player, okay? So when the ball's over here, our weak side cam should be looking to guard their central midfielder and really, really come in. Okay, now, so in general, that I would say there's 3 players that I'm not overly concerned with on defense, which is the weak side, their weak side fullback, their center back, and their keeper. And so I would say the striker actually does not have a primary defensive assignment. The striker we want the striker to remain high here so that in the event that we win possession, we have the field stretched and, we can receive a pass. So that's the main thing with the striker. Now, if they have the ball, back here, right, we'll want the striker to kind of pester them a little bit, put some pressure on them, not try to necessarily attack the ball, and sort of get beat. Sometimes what we see is that the striker is coming up and trying to play real pressure defense and then getting beat and then finding themselves over here, and now the center back has all kinds of space to play the ball, and then we start to unravel defensively. So when the ball is here, the striker has some responsibility to put some pressure on the ball, but I say pressure, and that's different from attack. Okay, we just want to make this person uncomfortable, make them make a mistake. If they make a mistake, if they make a bad touch, if they make a bad pass, we're going to win the ball in a really dangerous area for the other team and have a chance to score. What we don't want to do is like I say, attack and get beat. So that's really the striker's responsibility. So now let's say the ball goes over here. We'll switch sides. So the strong side and the weak side are changing again, right? So now we want to communicate between the center backs. This center back will come up, be ready to defend the ball. In this case now, this cam will need to come up and address their fullback. Our center defensive midfielder will take the strong side. The strong side midfielder here in this cam will need to retreat and also help kind of close up the middle. And so I think that about covers it, I hope. And so just to go over it, it really comes down to, okay, so the fullbacks have consistent assignments. They're looking for the wings. They want to mark them. The the center backs are going to trade off between covering the striker in the middle. The CDM in the middle is basically going to take the strong side. The strong side midfielder, the cam will take the weak side. Of the weak side cam will take the other midfielder, and then the strong side cam should be taking the fullback. So I know it's a little bit complicated, and it will take a little bit for the boys to learn. I think they'll pick it up fairly quickly once we can kind of go through and everybody's on the same page, and we can kind of repeat these in different situations. I do think for this team, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, in addition to the fact that it gives us an extra defender who has no responsibility, it helps us recover on defense. But that is an overview of marking and how we want to try to mark. Now, once everyone's clear on who they should be marking, we can spend a little bit more time talking about how to mark and where you should be. Now, it doesn't mean like every single player doesn't need to be right on their mark at all times. The further you are from the ball, I think the further away from your player you can be. This player here, these two are going to need to play really tight because they're pretty close to the ball. The players over here, I think the center back in this position, as long as they know who they're marking, and that responsibility is clear, and they know that their job is to prevent this player from receiving the ball and from turning the ball, the distance to their mark can vary. That's a little bit of complexity. We'll work that over time, but for right now is making sure everybody understands who they're marking. All right, so that was it for today. I hope this was helpful, and hopefully this gets players and parents and coaches all on the same page about what we expect to see out in the field, and we can help the boys together learn how to execute it. So thanks for watching, thanks for your time, and we'll see you out on the pitch.